TyePod, hosted by your friendly neighborhood PhD. Well, hi everybody, it's another episode of the TyePod, and today I'm joined by guest Cerys Davage, who is a podcast host. Her show is called Unbalanced, where she meets with different people in the disability, health, and medicine, all kinds of really helpful, beneficial people that she shares stories and information with. So happy to have you on, Cerys.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of, when I first start out with the podcast, I try to go a little bit light before we dig into deeper questions. I just wanted to give you just a minute to talk a little bit about you and maybe some of the like hobbies or fun things you kind of enjoy as an escape from just the real world.
Well, hello, my name is Cerys. I'm 23 years old and I was born and bred in Cardiff, which is the capital city of Wales, if you guys didn't know. So I've been living here my whole life. I went away to West Wales for university to study drama and theatre. But then I quickly realised that it's not quite a sustainable future for me as someone with a progressive muscle condition, limb-girdle muscular dystrophy. So when I moved back home, my life took a bit of a change because I was hoping to go into theatre, but then my passion for presenting and going into radio grew more and more. And so I started working in the Welsh media. So Welsh is my first language. So yeah, I've been working in media and now I work as a journalist for the BBC. And hobbies. I sing a lot with my choir.
Oh, nice.
I've been a part of a choir all through my life in school, and then in university. So now it's nice to still be a part of a choir, after leaving education. So I'd say that's my main hobby. It takes up a lot of my
Yeah.
week, but I really enjoy it. I've made a lot of new friends there. It's kind of like a family. We do a lot of competitions together. Um, yeah, the other thing that takes up most of my time is my podcast, Unbalanced,
Yeah.
that I've been, gosh, over a year and a half now.
Hmm.
I should probably say coming up to 2 years now. This
Wow,
summer
that's
in
awesome.
2025. Yeah, I'll be 2 years. It's just, yeah, insane. Yeah, it's been amazing, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But yeah, that's a bit about me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so great. There's so many directions I could go with that. But I think the music thing, if we could start there a little bit, I find that so many people have that as an outlet to dig into, whether they listen or sing or, combination of both. So like,
Mm.
was that something you were into even before when you were still thinking theater as an option, or like what was that like?
Well, I've always been musical because my whole
Yeah.
family is musical. Both my parents play instruments and my dad taught me piano from a very young age. So music has been a big part of my life all through
Hmm.
growing up, more than theatre. I play the piano and I play the harp as well, which is a very common instrument in
Hmm.
Wales. So yeah, I did all my grades in piano and harp, and yeah, I harp was kind of a side hustle for me. It still is a side hustle for
Yeah.
me. I play at weddings and different events. But I do find that, the older I get and the more this disease progresses and
Hmm.
the less I can play, kind of my stamina, if you will,
Yeah.
has lessened. And because I don't really, practice as much anymore because I don't need to, because I don't do grades.
Right, right.
Yeah, so it's been a huge part of my life, but singing will always be there. My voice will never go away. And
Yeah.
that's what I say about my podcast as well. But yeah, I've always enjoyed, me and my family have always enjoyed music and singing and yeah, all
Yeah.
sorts.
You know, the voice is such an important thing, I think, especially when you have a progressive disease like that, because it seems like as other symptoms maybe progress or things get worse, that at least tries to sustain itself. And, it feels like we can keep going as long as we have that ability, So I just think how much it's emphasized, the things that we do continue to have regardless of MD. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
really cool to
definitely.
hear.
Yeah.
Um, on the theater side of things, like you mentioned, at one point you decided that with the progressive thing, you really couldn't stay in that area. Did you like attempt to kind of pursue that and dig deeper in and see if it could be adaptable, or were there barriers that just made it like no way, probably?
Well, before university, I was part of like drama clubs and things, but I was still
Mhm.
pretty active and physically capable mostly. Um, so I thought, like this, I love it. Like this is what I really want to do. But I think when you're in the moment, you forget about the future and you forget about, being realistic.
Mhm.
And then when I went to study it, obviously my course was very practical, and I had to do a lot of things that I couldn't, like my colleagues would all, climb on tables for this production and I wouldn't be able to. I'd have to find my own way. I'd always have to adapt. So it wasn't that it's not possible because I know that, there's a lot of disability theatre companies. There's a
Mhm.
lot of people that are disabled in theatre that just, adapt things to them, and which is great. Um, I think I maybe was um just a bit naive to that world at that
Mhm.
point, and also I let my self-esteem get to me. I had very low self-esteem because of it. I had to keep, I was always different from everyone else, and I had to sit some
Mhm.
workshops out because I just physically couldn't keep up. If in a warm-up, if everyone had to run around the room, I had to figure out the alternative. So I just felt a bit separated from that. And I didn't want a job where I always had to consider my disability first. I just wanted something that I really enjoyed and was passionate about. And I think theatre was just an idea. And
Yeah.
I'm very lucky, I had a lot of different avenues to explore. And yeah, theatre for me, I didn't really pursue it after university, mostly because I found a job straight after, and I
Mhm.
thought that that could maybe lead to presenting, because I thought, okay, at least with presenting, I can sit down, or I could just stand up for a bit and I wouldn't have to run around the
Yeah.
stage. So yeah, that's the
And do you
avenue I'm
find
exploring now.
that, yeah, do you find that the independence factor like a big deal with the direction you chose, being able to actually control most of what, you're doing with presenting or hosting or anything like that?
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to
Yeah.
have to depend on other people to help me. Like if I did theatre, maybe I'd have to rely on an ensemble or whatever.
Mm.
But with presenting, I can write the ideas, I can record it, I can edit it all myself. And that's kind of why I started the podcast, because I knew that it is sustainable. Um, yeah, so I love being independent, and I hate when
Yeah.
I have to admit to myself that I do need help sometimes, because
Right.
we all
Right.
do.
Oh, definitely. And that's part of kind of reinventing ourselves. I think, as that progression occurs, that we have to realize that, well, this was working maybe a year ago even, and now we need to, adjust or change something to try to figure out again.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I was going to go into the podcast next and ask you kind of what, like how did you come around to that? And then what has the process been like doing everything from, planning the events to asking certain questions, that whole procedure kind of.
So like I said, I really enjoyed presenting, and
Yeah.
I'd dabbled with radio presenting while I was in school. And once I realized that theatre maybe wasn't the career for me, I realized that my voice is something I'll always have. And I think it was around COVID I really started getting into podcasts, as
Mhm.
most people did. And I love listening to just young women talk about their lives and issues that we face. And I guess I wanted to start my own, but I didn't really know what to talk about, because unless you're famous, no one cares about your life. You need a niche, you need like a thing,
That's true. Yeah.
and I didn't initially I didn't want it to be about disabilities, because I was like, no, like no one's gonna want to listen to that. They're just gonna feel sorry for me. That's not what I want. But it did eventually end up being that.
Mhm.
And I don't regret it at all, because the main drive that I had with starting the podcast was the fact that I grew up knowing no one else my age with a disability. I
Mhm.
always saw disabilities as, old people in wheelchairs, and I didn't really stop to consider that, I would be in that situation a lot earlier than, being old.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I guess I started the podcast as a voice that I wish I had growing up with
Mhm.
a condition that no one else really understood, or was able to say, look, I get it, like you're not in this alone. And it's so wonderful to see now, since starting the podcast, I've been like, my eyes have been open to this huge community of people of all different ages and of all different abilities.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I don't regret it one bit, because I've met so many amazing people along the way.
Yeah, definitely. And do you find that there's kind of a common thread through all of your guests? Like, is disability in some way kind of involved in their work, or do you kind of just base it on, just different people doing different things?
So I do a mix of solo and interview episodes. And with solo
Okay.
episodes, I do, I try and have a different topic. And some of them would be specifically related to disabilities, and
Mhm.
some would be kind of just normal issues that, all kinds of people face, even without a disability. And then maybe speak on my perspective on it as someone with a disability, like relationships or school or university. And then the interview side of it, most people do have, a disability or a mental health condition, or
Mhm.
are maybe not necessarily someone with a condition, but maybe someone with the power to make a change in a certain society.
Mhm.
Um, and again, talk about, just normal issues, normal topics that we all face growing up as, young adults, and
Mhm.
then just add that extra little angle of, overcoming extra hurdles, maybe with a disability or some kind of a condition. Um, So I just try to say that it is a podcast that shows what life is really like, with a disability or with an extra life barrier, I call it,
Mhm.
because it can be anything.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And what you were saying about disability and kind of having that lens that it's maybe elderly or, like it's, you have that stereotype just sort of built in, I feel like going
Mm,
through everything. And then, you kind of start to realize, well, anybody can have something happen at any point and they're going to lose
exactly.
the ability to do something. So, I think we're all connected in that way for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And it's not just a podcast for disabled people. Like you said,
Right.
anyone can become disabled. It's a podcast that hopefully educates other people who,
Hmm.
like me, didn't know much about being disabled, to just hopefully equip them to just be more educated and compassionate. And also, just in case they end up being disabled as
True.
well.
And you never know when you're going to help somebody else in some way too with an episode or
Exactly,
something.
yeah.
So I've found that really, something that I've liked since I started, this spring, doing podcasting. And, it's a lot more engaging, and I feel like you get a lot more
Mm.
knowledge or learning out of it than, kind of the other
Yeah.
methods that are out there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm learning so much, about all these different people and ways of living. Do you find that having a podcast also helps you as much as it might help other people, just knowing that other people can relate to your podcast?
Oh yeah, absolutely. With my MD, and I grew up in a small, rural town. There were, like you had said earlier, there weren't many people around that, were my age and going through that. And so, it took me longer than it should have. But I started realizing, well, there's this huge network out there with disability, and and it's a bigger umbrella than, I imagined as a kid, from, I mean, like you said, the mental health side, but then you have, therapists and caregivers who are family. And I mean, there's just such a, like a wealth of knowledge, I think, going through that.
Mhm.
And so it's almost therapeutic in a way. I don't know if you found that too, kind of, but
Yeah.
yeah.
It is honestly, I find it like therapy, because not only do I connect with lots of people and, we talk about different topics that, makes me feel better about certain things, but also
Mhm.
if I've got anything going on personally, I can just rant out on my podcast and
Yeah.
it's kind of like a vocal journal, I'm like keeping in check with my symptoms or how I'm feeling. And yeah, it's very therapeutic.
Yeah. Yeah. I really enjoy it so far. The name
Thank
Unbalanced, I was curious how you
you.
came to that exactly.
I'm so proud of that name. I love it because, everyone's unbalanced. Life is unbalanced, whether or not you have a disability. It could be mentally imbalanced. For me, I'm physically imbalanced because with my MD, I fall sometimes. So it's kind of like a joke as well. Yeah, it is fun to make fun of yourself, and
Oh yeah. Yeah.
it's not a serious podcast. It's supposed to be casual. It's supposed to be, like
Lighter.
just grabbing a coffee and having a chat. And there is that aspect of, disability humor is the best kind of humor, right?
Hmm.
So you've just got to laugh at yourself. So I think I was really stuck for a podcast name, and I was on ChatGPT, and they like suggested some horrible podcast names, but
Yeah.
one of them was something about balancing life, and I was like, oh, okay, well I like that, but I'm just gonna do Unbalanced. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's how it started.
Oh, that's perfect. I love that it ended up like with the AI chat GPT, and then it kind of provided, just enough, inspiration. You're
Just
like,
enough
oh
for me
yeah,
to
that
not have to give them credit,
exactly. Yeah, yep. I feel like that is what chat GPT is here for. But
Yeah.
yeah, but that's really cool though, that it came to you in that way, because I've kind of felt like I've been seeking balance for a while, because when I was in grad school several years back, it was like all these pieces that were important to me had to get shoved aside to focus on just that job and getting through that degree and everything. And then it was like, well, I need the mental health side, and I need the family side, and I need, time to do like volunteer work that I'm interested in and things. So I feel like it's almost like Unbalanced in a way is balanced too, as weird as that sounds. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I'm curious on the guests that you've had so far. Like, is there one kind of memorable thing that just really stood out to you? Funny, serious, like any?
Okay, so there's a few.
Hmm.
My highlight I would say is that I got someone that I've admired since she was on Love Island, Tasha Ghouri.
Hmm.
So she was on Love Island 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago, and she has a cochlear implant, so she's deaf. She was
Hmm.
born deaf, but she has a cochlear implant in one ear, so she kind of hears through that. And I really wanted her on my podcast, and I just wasn't getting through to her. And then
Hmm.
she released a book, and then I just tagged her in a story on Instagram that I was reading the book, And she DM'd me then and, hope you enjoying the book. And I was like, yes, please come on my podcast.
Right.
And that's how it happened. And she was recently on Strictly Come Dancing in the last season, and she was amazing. She was a finalist. And yeah, that was a big highlight for me. Another one is Blind Tobes. I don't know if you've come across him on social media, but he's so funny.
Yeah.
And I think that episode went so well because we're both just kind of, even though he's blind and I've like got a physical disability, it's like completely different, but we had so much in common. Like the back and forth was so good, and the chemistry was just like really, really good. And we had a lot of banter as well, which can't go wrong. Um,
Right.
so yeah, I'd say that. And also got a shout out to my sister as well, because she's come on my podcast to talk about her stammer, and that was really, really good.
Yeah, that's awesome that she was able to join you on that. But I think that's really cool. Some of the stories that can get, and relationships that can kind of pop up out of nowhere, through
Yeah.
that. So yeah.
Yeah.
Are
Like I've
there
made friends through
anybody?
it.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say I've made friends through it, like I've
Yeah.
connected with people, they've come on my podcast, and then we've just stayed in touch afterwards. It's really nice.
Yeah. Have you found yourself collaborating with other social media people on anything, or is that something that you think about in the future?
I would like to do that in the future. I think
Yeah.
because it's not my full-time job, I think
True.
to
Yeah.
go, to go into the deep end with, doing social media, which is what I deep down really, really want to do. It
Yeah.
does require a lot of energy and a lot of time, and I don't think people realize how much work goes
No.
into being a content creator, which I'm trying to balance with my full-time job. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is something I'd like to, do a bit more in the future. But in the meantime, I'm, going on other people's podcasts like yours,
Right.
and they're coming on mine, and I'm connecting with lots of different people. So it's great.
It's cool too that there's no pressure, no like any specific correct way I feel like to go. You can kind of like be creative with it, I've found, and
Yeah.
it's nice to have that outlet too. But
It's so nice.
um
Yeah, you could do whatever you want.
yeah. Do you think you would eventually like to just be permanently doing something like this if it could turn into a financially stable job too, which I realize looking at it on my own, it seems really daunting to make it where it could sustain, daily living
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, that would be the dream,
Yeah,
honestly. If I could, like you said, if this could be financially possible,
yeah.
I would love for this to be my full-time job. Although I think people over romanticize having, or being, sorry, I'm going to say that again. People over romanticize being self-employed.
Mhm.
I think nowadays having a 9 to 5 full-time job is like something you really want to get out of, and people don't enjoy it. But I think it's really good. It gives me a good routine. It gives me financial stability, and
Mhm.
you make a lot of friends, and you have so many connections. I'm a very sociable person. I'm an extrovert to the fullest. And I think if I did my podcast and going into content creation full time,
Mhm.
yes, I'd be interviewing lots of people and talking to people online and things, but day to day I'll be just sat here by myself or sat in a coffee shop by
Yeah,
myself. There's not that element of always socializing with the same kind of people. And that's, I think, something I would really miss if I did go self-employed and did do this full time, which
yeah,
is again not in the near future. Maybe sometime in the future that would be amazing. But for now, I'm
yeah.
enjoying my full-time job and just doing this on the side and having no other extra time.
Right, right. But no, I
Because it's a
think
lot of
that's,
work, isn't it?
it is, and I knew like video editing was never easy, but now even with the tools that are available, I'm just like, oh wow, how do you cut just the right clip to, preview the episode, and how do you upload the video version to YouTube and the podcast
Mm.
version to Spotify? And it's just like
Oh,
every single
honestly,
task is is kind of
I completely
tiring.
understand.
Yeah, yeah.
It's more than just, recording the interview. It's everything in
Oh,
between.
and I try to tell myself, like you were saying it was casual for you. I'm like, don't get OCD and edit out every other sentence or word or pause or,
Oh,
and
I
it's,
do that too. I'm too much of a perfectionist. I think it's more when
yeah.
it's my solo episodes, like I get really picky.
Ooh, yeah.
But then
I
with my interviews, I'm like, you go, girl. You're doing great.
see, I feel the same way because I went into these little short, like 3 minute, like scientific presentation things back in grad school. And once I recorded, I think I recorded probably 40 versions of the same 3 minute thing. And it was just me, I was just like, what are you doing? Don't obsess
No,
about it like that.
it's like you're
But
torturing yourself.
I know. And no one else probably cares besides you when you hear it. So,
Exactly.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh
Um,
dear.
yeah, I think hopefully I let things go a little bit more easily nowadays, but Uh, yeah. How about, I guess, challenges with the podcast you've had so far? Like, what are some of the things that stood out that you had to face with that?
Um, I would say, like I already mentioned, that it's just time. I think
Right.
it's very time consuming to edit. I think recording itself is fine because you do that in one sitting, but then
Hmm.
editing, especially if you've got a lot of episodes to edit, it can just be a bit daunting.
Yeah.
And a part of, well, my full-time job is video editing. So then when I come
Oh, that's your
home and then I
full-time
have
job?
to,
Nice.
that's my full-time job. So then I have to come home and then video edit for my podcast, which is completely different type. And obviously I still really enjoy it. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's a bit it can be a bit much sometimes if I just want to come home and then wind down and not look at a screen. But I've just started to hire an editor, which
Yeah.
only done a couple episodes so far. But hopefully, just offloading just a few of my episodes to him
Yeah.
will help lift the baggage a bit. Another challenge I have is that I want so many people on my podcast, but then if I record
Hmm.
them all in 1 month, some of them might not go out until the end of the year
I
because I
know.
can't put episodes out like every week. Um, so a big challenge is having to say to people, I'm very, very fortunate people are asking to come on my podcast, which is
Yeah.
amazing, but I have to just be like, I'm so sorry, can you wait? Like I've got so many already recorded and
It's
ready to go.
crazy.
Um, but yeah, I wish I could have everyone on my podcast and maybe I will one day.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll
It's hard
try.
too because like I want to get everyone's stories out there right away. Like I
Mm,
want that to be out there, and I'm just like I can't physically, edit that many episodes. And it's like, well, it's going to be a
yeah,
month or two before it comes out, and it's like, oh
yeah,
man, it's
I know. But I get it. Hey, if this doesn't go out until 2030, that's fine. I completely understand.
yeah, yeah. I try to go about 3 to 4 weeks out, but it just kind of it's a
Oh,
balance
that's
trying
fine.
to, you want to have enough ahead, right, where you can keep
Yeah,
episodes
that's the
going,
thing.
but then you
Yeah,
don't want,
it's like, yeah, you want a bank of content in case you like run out of
yeah,
episodes, but then
yeah,
also like I recorded an episode with someone in July and it didn't go out until February and I felt horrible and I'm not doing that again. So I
yeah,
think yeah, it's all a learning curve doing this
yeah.
podcast.
Yeah, I totally feel you there on that one. Um,
It's like rein it in. You can't put an episode out every day. No one's
I
gonna listen
know.
to that much.
Well, and it's also like I want to give the guests their time, their week to kind of shine.
Yeah.
I'll do like some highlight short clips and try to make it
I love
even where
that.
they all get exposure. But even that at times is just like, oh man, I just can't put it out
Yeah.
there fast enough. But
It's a lot.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's worth it, I think, but still. Back on the MD side, I'd like to get into that just a little bit on like your diagnosis pathway and like, are there treatments that you've gotten that have helped? Are there doctor stories where they maybe were or were not helpful? All those kinds of details with it.
Okay, so my diagnosis, I'm gonna have to bring in another diagnosis to
Yeah.
explain the story, but um, when I was born, after I was born, I struggled with eating, and
Mhm.
it took 7 years of not growing and being really anemic and having a really bloated belly, um, for the doctors to finally diagnose me with celiac disease at the age of 7. And it was while I was getting blood tests for the process for celiac disease, the
Mhm.
doctors also noticed that my CK levels were really high in my bloods, which is obviously related to muscles. So that then led them down the track of getting me a diagnosis for limb-girdle muscular dystrophy, and I have type 2I, or recently known as R9. So yeah, that and a genetic test confirmed my
Mhm.
diagnosis, but I was pre-symptomatic, so I wasn't showing any symptoms at 7 years old. And I kind of knew I had something going on because I was going to Great Ormond Street Hospital in London annually for checkups, and I kind of knew there was something to do with my muscles, but my parents didn't tell me the name of it until I started to show symptoms at 12 because
Mhm.
they just didn't want me to Google it or get worried about symptoms or look out for symptoms
Absolutely.
that weren't coming, because you can read a description on Google, but it's not going to be exactly what you go through.
Right.
So that was very wise of
And
them.
Google always lists the statistics too, right? And so you like read
Hmm.
into that and you're like, well, that's the truth of it. That's facts. And
I know,
yeah,
and they're always the most extreme ones. Like they just scare you like crazy. Like
seriously.
you can Google anything, and one of the symptoms would be like death, and you're like,
Hmm.
well, I'm not going to live a great life now thinking about
Well,
that.
every prescription that you can get basically causes death these days. So
Yeah, it's like, here are all the side effects. Just checking that you're happy with that. I'm like, of
yeah.
course not, but okay,
And it might
thanks.
not fix the issue that you're taking it for either.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, can't win. But yeah, around 12, I started to show symptoms. So I was really slow in school. I couldn't really keep up whilst running with my friends.
hmm
I was always the last in the race on sports day.
Yeah,
You
I
know the
feel that.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then when I went through high school, I struggled more with stairs and getting up from seats, having to overcompensate for my weak hips with my
hmm
arms, pulling myself up. And I was experiencing frequent falls, so my knees would kind of give way and I would just fall randomly.
hmm
I could be anywhere and with no warning whatsoever, and I would just be flat on the floor.
Just
And I just
random,
have
yeah.
to kind of, yeah, just get used to it. And I really do struggle with getting up from the floor, so that's not ideal.
hmm
Yeah, so yeah, more and more I struggled with just littler things, and I couldn't walk for long distances, and I used to go out for bike rides with my family, and then I had to eventually stop doing that.
hmm
So it's just become a slow progression over the years of just struggling more with little things like getting dressed or doing my hair. I can't keep my arms up for too long, otherwise I'll get really
Yeah.
tired. Um, it is mainly my hips. I have a waddle when I walk because my hips are
hmm
so weak. So I'm at the point right now where my disability is invisible at times, but also visible if I walk or struggle getting up from a seat or something. So
hmm
yeah, it's kind of like I'm living a double life, like advocating for myself if people point at me funny on the street walking, but also if people don't believe me if I don't look disabled parking in
Yeah.
the handicap spots.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with my LGMD.
Yeah. Have you experienced a lot of that sort of stigma or like, with the invisible side of it? Do you find that people are like doubting or calling you out on that or anything?
Absolutely. I do think people are quick to judge. I
Yeah.
don't mind if it's curiosity or, if I'm parking in a blue badge spot, like a disability parking spot, and someone comes up to me and asks, why are you parked here? I know that they're just defending disabled people because they genuinely don't believe me. But then
Right.
I whip out my blue badge, put it on my car, or, because I don't have a mobility aid all the time. I have a wheelchair, but I don't really use it that much right now.
Yeah.
It's not like I have something immediately obvious to show someone. But the most common thing I've had is if I'm using the accessible toilets, people will judge me for that because they
Yeah.
just see me walking in and they see me walking out. They're not
Yeah.
seeing me struggle in between.
And they always have their
So
assumptions and the assumptions are negative. Like,
exactly,
yeah.
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 So I think people can be quick to judge in that way rather than just being like, you know what? We can't always see disabilities. Let them do
Right.
their thing. I think people can mind their business a bit more in that area, I'd
Right. And they
say.
don't know our whole story unless they're like living with us or going to every single thing we do. I just,
Exactly, yeah. And there's just
yeah,
so many different types of there's so many reasons to use the accessible toilets. You don't have to have a disability either.
true.
So,
It's very true.
yeah, it's just that's something I've had to just deal with and just put on a face and say,
Yeah.
no, I have a disability. And even then they might not believe me, but that's not my problem. I've
Well,
learned that
right.
now.
Right. Yeah. I think there's a level of, where you just don't care anymore. It's, after you've gone through enough and seen enough people ask things, you're just like kind of maybe not completely oblivious to it, but I feel like you get better at sort of letting it go and not letting it bring you
Mm,
down, and is that kind of
yeah.
how it's been for you?
Mm, yeah. Yeah, it has in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a people pleaser as well, and I really
Yeah,
just like I don't want anyone mad at me, and I want to just justify myself. And
exactly.
something I've had to adjust to is to just be okay with people not understanding quite right.
Yeah.
Because it's not my job to educate everyone in the world. I
Right.
can try to as much as I can, bit by bit, with every
Yeah.
encounter that I have. But at the end of the day, if people don't want to believe you, then you
That's
just got
their
to learn
issue,
to
huh?
let them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as public speaking goes, have you done like live events kind of with advocacy or anything else? Like what um have you been in that area too?
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I've kind of let's see, how do I start the sentence? So a few times I have led kind of seminars or youth discussion groups at
hmm
limb-girdle muscular dystrophy conferences. I've also recently been asked by Muscular Dystrophy UK to be a speaker at their information day in Birmingham. So that was really cool. I got to just stand up in front of a crowd and talk about my lived experiences growing up with LGMD and then my podcast. And I chose the subject finding strength in self-advocacy because
Mm,
I think that's not something I've always grasped the concept of, and I think it's something really important to learn as quick as you can in
mhm.
life, especially with a disability. So yeah, that was really cool, and I think that was my first kind of conference talk. But I'm open to more. I honestly,
Yeah.
my parents say I can talk for Wales. I cannot stop talking. So yeah, I enjoy that. Do you do a lot as well?
Back in my academic days, I was doing a lot of presentations and like posters, everything. I was going to conferences like I visited, like Seattle and San Francisco and gone to some, places like that. But since I stopped working in that field and I'm kind of adjusting to, progressive stuff, I've stopped doing, any major events. But now I'm in a place where it's stable enough. I can maybe, you know, selectively choose some places to do it.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that would be cool.
yeah.
Oh wow, that's cool.
But yeah, I could see that, eventually being something down the road too. Um,
Mhm.
what
Yeah.
is your like approach when you're giving a talk like that? Do you try to have like an outline? Do you give kind of the same thing, or do you try to?
Um, I've been on more I've been on other people's podcasts a lot, and I think
Mhm.
I have kind of equipped myself with ready-made answers for different questions. Like I'm sure some things I've said here I've said before elsewhere, but um I think that's a good thing because I can ramble a lot. I can just go off on a tangent and then never come back. So that's probably a good thing. As for public speaking, I think you can make as many notes as you want to before, but once you stand up there, you will just well, I just blurted everything out as much as
Yeah,
I could. Um, just off the top of my head, I had my notes and I was like having to pause to just like make sure I hadn't missed anything because I'd
yeah,
spoken so much. So I think, being up there is very different to preparing it and going through it in your room. You can
yeah,
rehearse as much as you want to, but then I think it's nice to keep the authenticity a little bit as well because people like to watch someone that they can relate to and they feel like they know, I
yeah.
think.
More like conversational kind of approach
Yeah.
to it. Yeah, and it
And
it
I
feels
have to
more
crack a
organic.
joke. It
Yeah,
does feel more organic, definitely. I always have to crack a joke or two. Like I can't be serious. I need to chuck in some jokes.
yeah. What are a few of your favorite ones that you throw out if you
Oh
want to
my
share?
goodness. I just mean like, my parents always thought that I'd be a good stand-up comedian.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think I'm better like banter wise with like a back and forth, or like if
Mm.
I'm stringing a sentence along about something else and then say like a funny joke in between that
Oh,
rather than
okay,
like
yeah.
standing there and someone saying, "Tell me a joke." I think I'm better with like um like kind of sarcasm in a way,
Okay, yeah.
and also, like making fun of myself. Like if I say, like, Unbalanced is the name of my podcast, and you can
Yeah.
probably tell I'm
I'm
unbalanced,
on balance. Yeah,
just
yeah.
little things like that. Maybe not everyone finds that funny, but I find it hilarious. I found
Honestly, I
myself so
think I do
funny.
that probably too often as well. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the best kind. I also
Yeah.
have to blame my dad because he cracks dad jokes more than ever,
Oh,
and I think
nice.
I've
So that
I've
just
caught
rubs
on to
off.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah. Yeah, that's good though. I think humor is a pretty important thing to keep
Very
in it.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's really cool though that would you ever consider doing like stand-up comedy or is that just so far outside of
I think I'm better with just speaking normally. I think
Yeah, yeah.
like one of my biggest fears is standing in front of a crowd and saying a joke and then no one gets it or no one
Silence.
laughs.
Yeah.
Like that is probably one of my biggest fears. So I think that fear is too big for me to ever want to do something like that. I think
Yeah,
I'm
that
happy
sounds
just
scary to me too.
chatting.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, just the sound of like crickets or something, when you're standing up trying to do that. And how do you go to the next joke without like just
No,
freezing
yeah,
up?
that's too much.
Yeah, yeah. No, but I like the kind of little bit of sarcasm here and there. That's
Hmm.
that's kind of nice.
Exactly.
Yeah. What has it been like though, as far as like meeting people at those events too? Like, do you find that you've connected with, people in the community more that way also?
Definitely. It's been quite surreal. I've had people come up to me and be like, I love your podcast. Like, I
Yeah.
relate to it so much. And I'm like, who are you? Like, this is insane. How do you know about my podcast?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been really nice in that way. I've met a lot of people who maybe not necessarily has the exact same condition as me, but
Hmm.
that doesn't really matter, you know. They still have very similar experiences to me, and it's just been really nice to just have someone who gets it, you know. You can have people
Yeah,
in your life that understands and wants to help you as much as they can, but there's no one like someone that's going through the exact same things as you. And
right.
it's just been so nice to actually meet these people. I'd say it's probably one of the most valuable things about this community is actually getting to meet up with people and sharing those experiences and making those connections and exchanging numbers or social media so that you can text each other whenever you have a bad day and the other
Hmm.
person just be like, yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah, that's so great to have relatable stories, I think, like that too. And
Mm,
that's another thing with the podcast, obviously, it's like, yeah, that's people know kind of what you're dealing with, and
yeah,
that's just really, I don't know, it's just a nice support for sure.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm helping other people. If I just help one person, I've done my job. But just knowing that they can relate to it and it makes them feel less alone, makes me feel less alone. It really
Right.
helps me as well. Because sometimes if you are going through a bad day, you can feel like the only person in the world who is going through that bad day. But actually, it's really nice to hear that other people are struggling as well. As horrible as that sounds,
Well, that's
you
right.
know.
Right. But I think there's just
Mm.
that's part of life with a diagnosis like this
Mm.
is you do want to reach out to people that understand, and share that. And it's not saying you want them to have it, obviously, but it's just,
Hmm.
yeah, it's makes it a little bit easier to cope, I think.
Yeah, that's another joke I say actually. I'm like, if
Yeah.
you guys have got the same thing as me or other muscular dystrophies, I'm so sorry, but thank you. I'm so glad at the same time.
See, that's a good one. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you're not just alone in the world with it for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, when you were growing up, like, did you have a support system, or like, I'd like to get your, thoughts on how valuable that is, and maybe different types of support that you've, received from friends, family growing up and things like that.
Mm. I'm very lucky. I had a very supportive family who didn't have a clue about limb-girdle muscular dystrophy when I was born, because who would have? It's a very rare disease. I was quite young, so I think I feel for my parents because they had the responsibility of raising me knowing that I had this diagnosis and what my future might hold before I even really understood that myself.
Mm-hmm.
So they were put in touch with other parents and specialists, and I think that's really helped them understand the condition a bit more, but also just receive that support. I also have two younger sisters
Hmm.
who both have the same condition as me, which is
Oh, okay.
crazy. But they're both affected quite differently from me, which is quite insane, really, because we have the same
Hmm.
diagnosis. I'm actually more relatable to someone else with a different subtype of LGMD than I am with to my own sisters. But I guess it's kind of nice knowing that I've got my sisters in it as well.
Yeah.
And we can kind of share different experiences. But I'm the eldest of the three of us, and I'm a lot more progressed than they are. So I feel like
Mm-hmm.
they, even though they still have it, they're not experiencing the same things as me. So they still don't really understand
Yeah.
it to the full effect that I do. They just have a complete different experience that maybe I don't understand what they're going through. Um, it is, yeah, it has been nice to have them as well, and we are in it together. And we're very lucky, you know, we have a lot of support around us. And I grew up with friends that didn't understand my condition because I
Yeah.
didn't either, but they were there and they offered an arm for me up the stairs, or, you know, I went on a girls' holiday with my friends that I grew up
Hmm.
with, and they were the ones that encouraged me to bring the wheelchair rather than, because
Yeah.
I thought, oh no, I don't want to bring my wheelchair. I don't want to burden you guys. And they were like, Karis, realistically, if you don't bring your wheelchair, you will struggle and will have to stop walking every 10 minutes to sit down. And that
Yeah.
will be an inconvenience for us. Whereas if you take it, we can just wheel you around. We won't have to stop.
Yeah.
So yeah, they've been great in kind of opening my eyes to that. And I've been very lucky in that way as well.
Yeah, that's really great to have people that are, even if they don't understand, they're empathetic and try to be there for you for sure.
Yeah. I
Um,
also have to mention, not that I forgot,
yeah,
not at all, but my boyfriend, I live with him now.
yeah, yeah,
And
no worries.
just I didn't forget, I promise. I
Yeah,
promise.
no.
I was just saving the best to last, of course. But yeah, so we've been together for over 5 years, and
Hmm.
he's kind of like watched me progress in a way because, when
Hmm.
I was 18, I wasn't experiencing the same symptoms or maybe as bad as I am now.
Yeah,
And we're living together now, and he supports me so much, so I have to give him a big shout out as well.
definitely. Yeah, that's really good to have all those different areas too to have support with, friends, family, partners, all of that. I feel like it takes a village to get through a lot of these things, that come with
Yeah,
MD. So
it really
yeah.
does.
And
Yeah.
I'm sure your sisters are like all of you probably teach each other, but also, learn new things too. So I think that's probably them having you as older sisters helping
Mm,
them quite a lot, even if the symptoms aren't quite, the same, or if they're,
yeah.
there
Yeah.
earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
all helping each other. And
Yeah.
it's nice to have people so close to you that they know if you're struggling, even if you don't vocalize it. I think sometimes I can swallow my pride and be like, I'm fine, and it's
Yeah.
obvious that I'm in a lot of pain. And, my sisters and my boyfriend, they can see right through
They're
that.
like,
So
we know, like,
yeah,
you can't hide
yeah,
that
that's
from,
kind of nice in a way.
yeah. Yeah. No, it's kind of that unspoken knowledge of what you're
Yeah,
going through. Yeah. Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, I found that I've been writing a few guest blogs here and there about, family and support and all that stuff, and then creative outlets, just a whole bunch of different things. And then there's these memories of people, back when I was younger, I didn't realize necessarily that, they were just like treating me just like, anybody else. And that was a really nice thing to have, even though like for me with I was driving those three-wheeled large scooters at the time, so obviously it's not like you can. I mean, it's always there, but I never felt like it was the only thing that they looked at, So I think that's valuable.
Mm. Yeah, they don't see you for your disability. They
Yeah,
see you for you.
and that's one piece of you, right?
Exactly,
Yeah,
yeah. And I think, if you had friends that needed your help, you would go out of your way to help them, in the same
right.
way that they would for you. So, yeah, it's not a big deal, I
Yeah,
think people like to help each other.
yeah, I think so too, and especially I don't know. It just seems like so many of the MD community, is like really empathetic and bands together that way. So
Yeah,
that's that's
that's
pretty
it's
cool.
lovely. Yeah.
Um, well, it's been really great, Karis. I know that we're approaching 45 minutes hour here, but is there anything you would like to add or talk about kind of like projects coming up, anything specific?
Ooh. Well, if you guys want to follow my podcast, it's available on all podcast platforms. I'm also actively on Instagram if you want to follow at Unbalanced Podcast on Instagram. Um, but yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on your podcast, and I think it's great, you know, that you do what you do and just amplify voices of those with MD. It's just so important because the more of us podcasters there are, the merrier because we're making up for lost time,
Right, right.
There was a time when there wasn't a podcast about disabilities and now there's a ton. So
Well, we can make a lot
it's
of
great.
extra noise, I think, that way too, which is probably
Yeah,
good.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Will I be seeing you at the MD conference in Florida?
I'm strongly considering because now that I'm on the east side of the country, it's less than 10 hours, I think, probably to go, but I'm still kind of in between, on
Mm,
coordinating the whole thing, which I'm sure you're,
yeah,
familiar with all that. But yeah, like it's something I really want to dig into, finding, some of these conferences in person because those are connections that are worth a lot too.
definitely. And I
Yeah.
know it's a big trip. And if anyone listening is considering coming to, well, the LGMD conference in Florida or any other conference, Um, I know it can sound like a lot, and obviously it's very expensive. But I think these connections are so worth it.
Me
I've
too.
been to the conference in Iowa and the one in Amsterdam, and I'm speaking at the conference in Florida.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, but yeah, it's very worth it. It's worth
Yeah.
the investment, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I did go to a smaller one in Atlanta last fall that was really cool. So I'm definitely mixing in some more events here and there. But
Nice.
maybe if I can kind of coordinate everything. But if not at some point, maybe there's another one meet down the road.
There'll be a ton, yeah. This
Yeah,
won't be the last one for sure, but fingers
yeah.
crossed, we'll see.